This week in East Brunswick, a group of residents were entertained by the Jazz Experience, a trio of musicians who perform jazz, blues, and ragtime at the library this Sunday. Also this week, Adrian Eisner of the Township Consumer Affairs Office will be in the studio to talk about door-to-door sales of blind-made articles. We'll show a segment of a meeting held at the library by the Association for Retarded Citizens to promote a positive attitude towards group homes. Our first news segment this week is the Mayor's budget message, which was delivered to the Township Council and attending public at this week's Council Action Session.
Ladies and gentlemen of the Council, friends in the audience and friends at home, over the past few years, we in East Brunswick have been most fortunate in that we have been relatively unaffected by the economic chaos occurring in the rest of the country. This has been partially the result of chance and partially the result of our own actions. By chance, we're located in what some of the county planning staff refers to as the Sun Belt of New Jersey. That is, while other parts of the state have seen a loss of industry and employment, the Monmouth, Middlesex, Somerset, Essex Belt has maintained a rather steady rate of growth over the past decade. East Brunswick is in the center of this growth area, and we have seen our share of new industry and expansion of existing facilities. In the recent past, Owens, Illinois, U.S. Steel, Automatic Data Processing, among others, have established facilities here in East Brunswick, and existing facilities such as Continental Baking, DAC Foods, and Action Tungsram have undergone substantial expansion. While location is important, the atmosphere for business development and operation is at least equally important, and we've taken many deliberate steps in this regard. An active and vital Council on Economic Health has both provided direction and planning to attract industry and provided a pool of East Brunswick boosters who are respected by prospective industrial residents. A competent and professional staff provides assistance in planning and interpreting development requirements. A business ombudsperson helps streamline the paperwork and make contact with the appropriate staff persons, and continuing liaison with the East Brunswick Regional Chamber of Commerce provides open communication channels. While location and our own aggressive programs to attract new industry and encourage expansion of existing industry have been successful, the area of local development, which has historically produced the greatest growth in our tax base, has been in deep trouble. New residential construction has fallen to the lowest level in the past 20 years. The reasons for this are well documented elsewhere, but are primarily related to high interest rates. The number of residential certificates of occupancy issued over the past few years is the best indicator of this fact. In 1979 and 1980, there were 192 and 199 residential certificates of occupancy issued, respectively. In 1981, the number fell to 80, and in 1982 was only 108. The net effect of these conditions has been to dramatically slow the growth of the rateable base over the past 2 years. Now, rateable growth has three effects on local revenues. When land is converted from agricultural purposes to other uses, usually residential construction, so-called rollback taxes must be paid, and these result in a one-time revenue which can be appropriated in the following year. Further, in the year in which an improvement is first placed on the tax rolls as an added assessment, there is the unanticipated revenue of the new property or new construction, which also may be appropriated in the following year. And finally, the new rateable increases the tax base for the following year. The effect of general economic conditions is easily seen from the following numbers. In 1979, the rateable base had actual growth of $15.7 million. In 1980, $15.4 million. But in 1981, growth dropped by over 50% to only $7 million and remained there in 1982 at $7.5 million. While I have made sure that we do not become overly dependent on state and federal funding, changes in policy in Trenton and Washington have resulted in a reduction in the funds which we receive from these sources, and this too has an impact on local revenues. From 1979 to 1982, state and federal aid increased by 25%. However, the amount of anticipated revenue from state and federal sources will decrease by 15% in 1983 to a level which is only 6% over 1979. This is the context in which my recommended 1983 budget was prepared. I began the budget preparation process with the objective of presenting a budget which would not increase the tax rate for municipal purposes. With the able and dedicated assistance of the Citizen Budget Committee, many reductions were made, some of which I will describe for you, and the remainder you will see in your budget materials. There are three major areas of reduction which I would like to discuss this evening. These are garbage collection, street lighting, and funds for opposition to the Wheelbrader-Frye proposal. Over the past few years, we have experienced one of the lowest per capita costs for garbage collection in Middlesex County. We have had a fixed price contract with the annual charges guaranteed for 5 years. That contract expires on June 30th, 1983. This means that bids must be taken for a new contract or some other alternative selected. The cost for collection has been $685,000 per year. Based on bids received by other municipalities, I believe that this cost could increase to $850,000 to $1 million per year. The situation is further complicated by the fact that our present contractor is going out of business with the completion of our contract, and there is no other firm of sufficient size to serve all of East Brunswick. We will take bids for collection service, but it will be necessary to divide the township into service areas, probably 4, and receive bids on each service area, as there are several firms which have the capacity to serve areas smaller than the entire township, but none that we know of at this time which has the capacity to serve all of it. Based on all of the studies I've seen, private collection has many advantages, and I would far prefer to continue collection on a contractual basis. While I believe that the advantages of private collection are sufficient to justify a small increase over present cost, I do not believe that we can afford a 35 to 50% increase in these costs. I have therefore directed the staff to design the least expensive municipal collection service possible as an alternative to private collection should the bids be too costly. There are 2 principles, however, that I believe should hold no matter which alternative is selected. The first is that present levels of service should be maintained. The second is that the service should continue to be direct service, included in the services each resident receives in return for his or her tax payment. Although this inclusion of a municipal collection alternative and holding the budgeted amount to $600,000 has been described as controversial, I see it as a rather objective decision based on what we as taxpayers can afford. When the bids are in and the municipal alternative has been fully described, the decision can and should be made on the basis of the cost of the alternatives before us. The impact on the budget of this approach of capping collection costs at $600,000 is a reduction of $200,000. Since 1978, the cost of street lighting has increased by over 54%. It represents nearly 3% of the municipal budget and will cost about $375,000 in 1983 if present levels of lighting are maintained. I believe that this represents a luxurious level of service, far beyond the basic level of lighting which our residents have every right to expect. It represents a level of lighting far beyond that required for public safety and cannot be justified by any objective standard in that area. Further, since the cost of street lighting is paid for from general tax revenues, and since newer areas of the community tend to have more lighting than older areas, it means that the residents of areas which are less well lighted are subsidizing those residents with greater lighting. As development takes place, the standards of the township require the developer to pay for the installation of street lights, and therefore this is seen as free to existing residents. What has not been obvious is that the existing residents must then carry the annual electric bill for those lights. I believe that that bill has reached a level which we can no longer afford as a community. Today, there are well over 3,600 street lights, or about 156 lights per square mile. Each of these lights costs nearly $100 per year to operate. Now, I've taken two actions with regard to street lighting expense. First, I've instructed the Department of Public Safety to selectively, and I emphasize selectively, extinguish lights which clearly, and I emphasize clearly, do not increase public safety. And secondly, I've directed the planning staff to recommend to the Planning Board a new standard for development which will reduce the number of lights installed in new developments which we all must eventually pay for. This action will result, that is the action of selectively extinguishing lights, will result in a reduction of the budget of at least $100,000 this year. The third area of the budget which I would like to discuss is the cost of technical and legal assistance required to effectively oppose the Wheelabrator Fry mass-burning resource recovery plant proposed for Middlesex County and to be located in East Brunswick. First, I would like once again to make explicit my personal opposition to the proposed plant. Even with the most recent revisions to the plan, there are still many unanswered questions about its safety. But at the same time, I realize that the bill for effective continued opposition will be very high. Based on the costs incurred in the review of the preliminary proposal, which were about $27,000, the staff estimates that the more detailed verification of the formal application, along with legal representation during all phases of the application review process by the state and county, will cost about $100,000. Although I remain convinced that the large majority of East Brunswick residents oppose the location of the facility here, and you and I have heard many vocal opponents speak against it at council meetings, there are others who, in less outspoken views, believe that while we should be vigilant to ensure the safety of our community, we need not review the application in the detail which would require the expenditure of $100,000, an increase in the tax rate of about 2 points. I have therefore placed the $100,000 necessary to thoroughly evaluate and oppose the proposal outside the budget, to be expended only if approved by the voters in a cap referendum. I have further placed in the township clerk's budget an amount sufficient to conduct the required special election and ask her, subject to your approval of course, to take the steps necessary to hold a special election on February 22nd. Now let me say I support the passage of the referendum. I believe that our opposition thus far has been very effective. Sound technical and legal evaluation has caused the applicant and the reviewing agencies to include many features which East Brunswick demanded in the present application that were not in the preliminary application presented last year. I further believe that we will only prevail in our opposition with a similar level of review in the future. I do not believe, however, that we should unilaterally expend this large sum of money without an expression of sentiment and will from the residents of East Brunswick. Well, those are the major reductions. There are many other less significant reductions which were made. Overtime in the police department was reduced by $45,000. The library appropriation was cut by $10,000. $10,000 for advertisement of the planning and zoning board's agendas was removed from the budget and will be shown on Channel 8 instead. The new Senior Citizen Center will not open until October instead of earlier, saving $13,000. Several school crossing guard posts are proposed for elimination, saving $10,000, and the 4th of July fireworks were eliminated, saving $3,000. There are others which you will see in the budget detail. After all reductions were totaled, I reduced the budget submitted by the department heads by $835,000. Even so, an increase in the municipal tax rate was required. I therefore considered two methods of further reducing the budget. One was layoffs, the other was a reduction of the work week and salaries by 1 day for some portion of the year. In order to achieve no increase in the municipal tax rate, it would be necessary to lay off 14% of the municipal workforce, or 34 people. These layoffs would affect every facet of municipal government. There would be layoffs in the court, the health department, planning, finance, the clerk's office, parks, public works, administration, assessing, and police. It is my judgment that such action would seriously impede the provision of basic services. Furthermore, it would result in the loss of some of our most productive and promising employees and also have a negative impact on our affirmative action program. For example, of the 8 police officers who would be laid off, 2 are women, or 1/2 of the women on the police force. I therefore rejected layoffs as a method of holding the tax rate at its 1982 level. A reduction of the work week by 1 day per week and salaries by the same amount was the most attractive alternative. A salary savings of 20% per month means about $109,000 per month for each month it is in effect. At the same time, all services would continue, although at a somewhat slower pace. As attractive as it appears in theory, however, consultation with Labor Council revealed that it was an untested method and might take months to be resolved. This would also mean months of uncertainty and turmoil, and, if it were determined to be an illegal action, would leave the township with a severe financial problem and likely result in even more layoffs than those that I've already described. I therefore also rejected the reduced work week as an alternative. Even though I reduced the proposed budget by $835,000, the fall off in the growth of the rateable base and the reductions in state and federal aid, combined with generally increased costs in all areas, has produced a budget which, if adopted by the Council, will result in a municipal tax rate of 1.08, or an increase of 0.08 or 8% over last year. Even so, I'm very proud that the municipal tax rate in East Brunswick over the past few years has increased by less than 3% per year, far less than any other agency which relies primarily on property taxes. As always, the department heads and I stand ready to assist you and answer all of your questions during the upcoming budget review sessions.
We will begin the public hearing on the budget this coming Saturday, January 22nd. It will begin at 9 a.m. in the library. It will be broadcast live on cable TV. There will be a public portion for each department then, and we will begin with an overview of the budget, discussing some of the major items brought forth in the budget message of the mayor tonight. Thank you, Mayor Fox. Okay, we move on then to
On Thursday, January 13th, the Association for Retarded Citizens, Raritan Valley Unit, along with the township, conducted and co-sponsored a forum to promote a more positive attitude toward group homes for the mentally retarded. Residents from many surrounding communities were shown a slide presentation which documented life in the over 100 group homes throughout New Jersey. A panel of speakers, chaired by Patricia Schillingberg, also included Harold Demore, Deborah Schulk, Blanche Ellis, and Abe Wilson. Stressing that fear and apprehension about group homes is unfounded and unnecessary, Community Education and Housing Coordinator for the Association, Fran Stromslin, made introductory comments.
The focus of tonight's presentation is on community-based residential placements for persons with mental retardation. People with mental retardation have a lifelong disability which inhibits or impairs their individual mental capacity or capacity to learn. Levels of functional learning are achieved, though more slowly and in more graduated fashion than a person with average mental capabilities. The overall predominance of persons with mental retardation encompass the mild to moderate levels of the disability. Therefore, these individuals can learn and do learn to care for their own basic needs and can thereby achieve greater personal freedom than is afforded to them in institutional care. We feel it is also important to differentiate between disabilities that are often confused by persons in the community at large, namely mental illness and mental retardation. Mental illness can be a short-term disability, which with proper treatment and therapy can be cured. At this time, there is no cure or treatment which can eradicate the condition of mental retardation. Although some types of mental retardation are preventable, when retardation does occur, it is a lifelong condition. However, only 2 to 3% of all those individuals with mental retardation are so severely and profoundly affected that they would require daily and constant medical supervision and care, and would best be served in an environment that provides such. Therefore, the effects for most individuals with mental retardation can best be minimized through early intervention programs, adaptive and functional levels of training, and increased normalcy of environment. Here, these are the people. Our program here tonight focuses in on these people.
Hello, I'm Adrienne Eisner of the East Brunswick Consumer Affairs Office. Welcome to Consumer Aware. In recent months, the State Attorney General's Office and the Commission for the Blind and Visually Impaired have received complaints regarding unlicensed persons selling articles supposedly made by blind people. Under New Jersey law, any person selling articles made by people who are blind must secure a license from the New Jersey Commission for the Blind and Visually Impaired, 1100 Raymond Boulevard, Newark, New Jersey. Anyone being solicited by such a vendor should ask to see the license before purchasing. Any person selling blind-made products without an appropriate license is subject to fine and/or imprisonment if convicted. You should report this person to the county prosecutor's office, the local police department, or call the New Jersey Commission for the Blind and Visually Impaired. Their phone number is 800-962-1233. That's the New Jersey Commission for the Blind and Visually Impaired, 800-962-1233. Thank you for joining me on Consumer Aware.
The Jazz Experience, Harry C. Pickens, piano, Jim Shank on bass, and Yusef Ali on drums, performed a mixture of blues, jazz, and ragtime at the library this week as part of the East Brunswick Arts Commission Sunday Concert Series. Here they are performing a jazz standard.